Welcome to another episode of the Two Shots Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Garcia, and we are bringing you an all new episode after coming back from a holiday hiatus. This is the first episode of the new year, and how fitting is it to bring back the one and only, my good friend here, Noah Magaro-George of Pounding the Rock. Hey, Noah, how was the holiday season and how have you been?
Great. Yeah, I mean, I got to go to home to San Antonio. I got to see my parents. I got to see my brothers and their kids. And so I really enjoyed that. We were all in the same house for Christmas for the first time in like 5 or 6 years. So really enjoyed that. But I can't complain. I've been enjoying the Spurs. I've been enjoying the season. And I'm really happy to just be talking Spurs basketball with you, Joe. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure always having you on here. But yeah, things haven't been so good for the San Antonio Spurs. I mean, they went ahead and beat the Pistons, and then after that, they kind of are on a skid again, But it's to be expected with the young team still trying to find their footing, so to speak. But the Spurs are already at the halfway mark of the season. The Spurs are at 41 games played through an 82 game regular season, and they are the fourth worst team in the NBA. Um, and I don't know. As a Spurs fan, you knew this was going to happen, but going through the season, 41 games in it, I mean, I think it's still an adjustment for a lot of the Spurs fans out there because they had delusions of grandeur in the beginning of the season when the Spurs were on that 5 game win streak. But we kind of all knew that things would settle down a little bit, and they kind of
Yeah.
have. And the Spurs have kind of shown you who they really are. I mean, and it's to nobody's surprise. It's not a knock on the team and it's not a knock on the players because they go out and play hard. This is just who the team is currently. And through the 41 games played, they are 27th on offense. They were 28. They're 30th on defense. That hasn't changed. 30th in net rating. And I mean, they're the fourth worst. They have the fourth worst record in the league with 12.5% overall picks and getting that top pick. Right now they're positioned to at least, I think at this point, I would have to say they're positioned to at least get a top three, top four pick in the NBA if everything goes right for them.
Yeah.
But through the 41 games played so far, they are who they are. What can you go ahead and say about this team through the 41 games?
While they're really bad, I think that Spurs fans can kind of take at least a little bit of solace in the fact that, they're not the Detroit Pistons, they're not the Houston Rockets, they're not that bad. I mean, they're bad, don't get me wrong. I mean, the numbers tell the story, right? They're not good, but every single night outside of, a couple of blowouts here and there, it feels like they're in every game,
They're
right? Like
competing.
exactly. Even without Keldon Johnson, even without Devin Vassell, they give the Boston Celtics, who are first in the Eastern Conference, the Memphis Grizzlies, who are second in the Western Conference, a run for their money. And I think that's all you can ask for. They're playing basketball the right way. They're still sharing the ball. Are they turning it over a lot? Yes, they're a young team. They don't have a lot of advantage creators. They don't have those go-to scores, but they're playing basketball the right way. Pop is instilling good practices and fundamentals into them. And you hope that that pays off in the long run, because you look at the Rockets, you look at the Pistons, what are they doing? They're losing for the sake of losing. They're not promised a pick. They're not laying a good foundation for the young players. You might as well give them the top pick and it's wasted, right? So with the Spurs, I think if you're a Spurs fan, you have to be happy that they're trying. They're not just outright trying to lose. They are trying to win games. They just don't have the personnel to do so.
Yeah, it's like that song way back when from the Fugees, "Killing Me Softly." The Spurs are tanking softly, Noah. you know,
Indeed.
they're trying. That's not like I'm saying, "Oh, they're taking you." No, no, no. Look, let's get this straight. It's not in their nature to tank. It's not in Coach Pop's nature to tank. The team is going out there and they're trying to go ahead and win games, and they're being competitive. But after that first quarter, the statistics have not been kind if the Spurs are behind. After that first quarter, it spells doom for the team more than not, and we've seen that happen quite a few times this season. Even going back to the outing that they had yesterday against the Memphis Grizzlies. They were behind the Grizzlies most of the game, and then lo and behold, fourth quarter starts to come around. They start to make a great push. It looks like they're going to make a valiant effort and come from behind and upset the Memphis Grizzlies. It was not to be. Couple of turnovers here and there, some bad decisions, And what happens? The Memphis Grizzlies go ahead and get the best of this young San Antonio Spurs team. And you know what? I'd like to point to the latest article that you wrote here, because you said, "What did we learn from the Spurs loss to the Grizzlies?" You want to kind of let us know a little bit more about your latest article on pounding the rock?
Sure, yeah. I think there's only a couple things. I mean, how much do you learn every game, right? I think one of the things you really learned is even though the Spurs are able to be competitive, they don't have a closer. You could have had Keldon Johnson, you could have had Devin Vassell. They're combined, I think, 9 for 30 on the season when it comes to crunch time when they're shooting. It's not good. And no one else is very good either. Everyone else is pretty bad. The Spurs have the 26th worst field goal percentage in crunch time, the 28th worst record in crunch time. They're 5-10. They don't get there that often because they haven't played a ton of close games, but they just don't have a closer. I think the other thing you really saw is Josh Richardson has done a lot for his trade stock. Over the last week, he's averaging almost 18 points per game, 4 assists, a couple of steals, a block. He's shooting nearly 40% from three. He's doing everything it feels like in his power to maybe get moved out of San Antonio. Not in like a bad way, but he's playing so well that if you're a playoff team, you're sitting there thinking, you need a 3-point shooting wing who can play defense. Josh Richardson is your guy. Now, can the Spurs get a first rounder? I think so. And if that's the case, I know it hurts to move off from a guy who helps you win, but I think you have to do it. You kind of have to bite the bullet because you have Blake Wesley, who's healthy now. He's just sitting out games. He's not in the G League. You want to get him on the court. Win or lose, you want him on the court. You want him to develop in the NBA, even if he's not quite ready yet. And I think the last thing that you probably learned here is Malachi Branham has been awesome. He's been really, really good now that he's comfortable. He's, pulling up in the pick and roll. He quick rip off of those catches on the perimeter, and he can trap guys on his hip, and he's patient and he's methodical, and he can knock down the catch and shoot three. So out of all the rookies, at least this last week or so, Malachi Branham has really impressed me. So those were my three takeaways from the Spurs game. But other than that, Joe, to be honest, it's, same old, same old. You're getting the kind of same thing every night. But I try to stay positive, and I try to provide some sort of insight for fans. So hopefully
Yeah.
they enjoy that.
Yeah, and just to tell you where the Spurs are at, like you were saying, entering crunch time, our good friend Paul Garcia had put up some stats, and I'd like to go ahead and reference Paul. Shout out to you, Paul. He says the Spurs are 5-9 when it comes to crunch time. They're 26 in the league, in crunch time situations. The Grizzlies 9-5, which ranks fifth when it comes to crunch time situations. Just to show you the gamut, the gap there that's between both the Grizzlies and the Spurs. I mean, the Grizzlies are a more seasoned team, and right now the Spurs they they're just not very good. They're like I think going into the game, Paul had put they were 13-28 overall was the record before the Grizzlies, and now they're 5-14 on the road, 5-21 versus the West. And the Spurs, they're 0-26 when trailing by double digits in a game this season. As we were stating,
Yeah.
once they fall behind quickly in that first quarter, if they're not at least tied or they're up on a team at least by a couple points, it doesn't bode well for this team. They don't have a closer. They're still a young team trying to figure things out, and they just don't have that experience that some of these other teams that have more veteran leadership on their team have. And it shows, especially when you're getting into those close games again, like we saw with the Grizzlies. When they really start pressuring this young Spurs team, they start making mistakes. They make turnovers, rush shots. That's the one thing that really irritates me with this young Spurs team. When you see them have the ability to, almost close that gap, and they're down by one or they're down by three, and they have the ball in their hand, and there's a ton of time left on the shot clock, and they're just rushing and they're forcing the issue, and they have poor shot selection and crunch time situations, and more than often that ball is going the other way because it's coming off of a horrible shot clanging off the front of the rim. Somebody on the opposing team gets the rebound, easy fast break, or they get the Spurs on their heels because they're not very good in transition, and there you go. I mean, just little mistakes like that really irritate me. And unfortunately, it's not going to get much better. They can learn, but it's not going to correct the issue anytime soon. But the good thing is that this team is learning, and as you have stated, Malachi Branham, as of late, has shown tremendous promise. And that's the thing that I think that Spurs fans kind of forget. With the Spurs not being that great this season, it's not about the wins per se. It's more about the growth of the young core. And if you're looking at
Absolutely.
not just Malachi Branham, but also the growth of one Jeremy Sohan, it's been tremendous. If you see where these kids were, and they're kids, they're rookies, in October, in the beginning of the season, to where they are now, you should get excited if you're a Spurs fan because you're seeing some real growth out of these rookies. This is the future of the San Antonio Spurs. And you told us a little bit about Malachi Branham, but what have you thought about one Jeremy Sohan as his growth from the beginning of the season from October up until now?
I think he was really good in December, right? You were seeing him sort of start to act as a pick and roll ball handler. He can find teammates in transition. He was able to knock down his free throws. I know that a lot of people wanted to make fun of him outside of San Antonio for the
Yeah.
one-handed free throws, but to me, that just means that you care about winning, you care about getting better, and he's not embarrassed. But even Pop said it, right? Like, it's selfless. It shows that you have humility, you're humble, you want to go out there, you want to work, you want to get better, you don't care what anybody thinks about you. So, I've been really impressed with his ability to just try to work on things because a lot of other players who are shooting, 20% from 3, they just stop shooting threes altogether. Jeremy Sohan has continued to try to shoot it. He's trying to rework his form. So, shout out to him. Now he has kind of slipped as of late. In January, he's only shooting 34%, more turnovers than assists. His rebounds are down. His pretty much everything is down right now. But to be fair, they have played a lot of good teams from the Nets to the Grizzlies, and he had a good game against the Pistons, but it's been a tough month. But I do think the outlook for Jeremy Sohan, you got to look at it as a positive because he is such a versatile defender. He's going to make mistakes right now, but as you mentioned, Joe, he's 19. I wasn't perfect at 19. I'm sure you weren't perfect at 19.
Oh
He's
no.
not a finished product, and I'm excited to see where he goes from here because I think you can really only go up from here if you're Sohan.
Yeah, and Spurs fans were really harsh on him in the beginning of the season, rookie, high pick, and he wasn't really known for his offensive prowess, and they wanted to see him, I guess, average double digits from the get-go, and that was not the case. But the thing that you've seen out of Jeremy as, the season has waned on here, 41 games in, he's become a lot more comfortable in the Spurs offense, and he's actually trying. He's moving well without the ball. He's moving well inside the paint. You loved his aggressiveness attacking, sneaking in for those backdoor cuts, sneaking, up court when teams aren't looking at him for an easy dunk. And he has great hands, by the way, too. I've seen a
Yeah.
couple of plays this season where Jakob Portal has thrown the ball directly towards his face. Jeremy Sohan is doing the backdoor cut and just catches the ball as he's in full stride, doesn't miss a beat, and goes up and immediately dunks the ball. I mean, that was surprising. I never knew the kid had such great hands.
Yeah, no, he's got tremendous hands. I mean, I don't think he's ever going to be that big of an offensive threat, but he does all those little things that you talked
Yeah.
about well. I mean, he's got great hands. He can catch lobs. He can catch balls on the move. And on the defensive hand, it kind of goes hand in hand with his skill set, right? I mean, he's got those good hands to poke balls, deflections, put a hand in guy's face. Like he's got great hands on both ends of the floor. So I can't say enough about Jeremy Sohan. And I know some fans were disappointed in him, but I think if you knew what he was coming out of college, he's lived up to, if not exceeded expectations. Like I think he's been everything that you would have hoped for as a Spurs fan.
Oh yeah, he's been a solid pickup for the San Antonio Spurs, and I believe they playing him right now at the power forward position.
Yep.
So, I mean, you can't ask for more from him. I mean, he's going to be a Tim Duncan. No, no, he's not. But I mean, he's a very solid pickup for the San Antonio Spurs. So I think it's unfair when they try to make that analogy. Oh, he's never going to. Well, that's fine, but he is who he is, and he's a good player.
Yeah.
So moving on here, I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about some of the roster moves that the San Antonio Spurs did this last week. They made some trades here. That kind of didn't make a lot of waves here. It was not very sexy trades, but
Yeah.
nonetheless, they were trades that were made for the betterment of the team. And the Spurs, they went ahead and made a trade. They waived Gorgie Dang, and the Spurs traded for Noah Vonleh and cash considerations with the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics are going to get a 2024 second round pick, protected 31 through 54. That was per Bobby Marks of ESPN. And let's be honest, I mean, the second pick will probably never see the light of day for the Celtics. This was done just to go ahead and help both teams kind of clear a little bit of space, as far as the Celtics getting rid of the Vonleh, let's say, cap. They're getting rid of his salary, so they have more money on their cap space. And the San Antonio Spurs getting the cash considerations from the Boston Celtics. I believe that the latest article that I was reading from Eric Pincus of Bleacher Report, he was saying that the San Antonio Spurs actually came out on that deal by getting 1.5 million in cash from the Boston Celtics. So it was an easy yes for them. And the unsexy thing with a lot of Spurs fans is the Spurs immediately waive Vonleh and Gorgie Dang, only to go ahead and have a 10-day contract roster spot open. And what do?
Yeah.
They immediately sign Gorgie Dang again. Well, it is not a sexy move. The Spurs are doing this to go ahead and help the betterment of the team, but at the end of the day, they're still around $15 million below the cap space, or below the limit. So they still have to go ahead and find a way to spend that money. And doing trades such as this aren't sexy, but it does help them get closer, because if they don't go ahead and spend that, what, $15 million, they're gonna have to pay that in bonuses to the players that are on the team currently, much like Oklahoma City had to do last season. So these aren't sexy moves, Noah, by any means, but I mean,
No.
they're smart moves. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a good business decision, right? I mean, Pop in the front office are doing their due diligence. They're helping out a team who they've done quite a bit of business with, from the Derek White trade, where they got Josh Richardson back and they got that 2028 first round swap and the other first round pick, and they got Romeo Langford, right? And they're just continuing to do business with a franchise that they feel comfortable with, who's not in their conference. And honestly, at the end of the day, even if they don't end up meeting that salary floor, what is it to them to hand out that bonus to all the players, right? They split that leftover money amongst all the players on the roster. I just don't see it as anything but, smart business move. You're building some good rapport with, another organization. And, maybe sometime down the line, they will help you when you need help. So I think it's smart. I don't think that there's, anything sexy about it, but it doesn't have to be. They're not in win now mode. No trade that they're going to make right now is probably going to make waves across the roster where, suddenly they're contending for the playoffs or the play-in or anything like that. But yeah, I agree with you 100%. There really is no other way to look at this trade.
Yeah, I mean, and like I was saying, they're like, the Spurs are currently 15.9 million from the salary floor, and their cap space currently is about 27.7 million, with the 14 players on guaranteed deals. One player, of course, now Gorgie Dang took on that 10-day contract. So if they go ahead and, let's say, make another trade with another team and they immediately waive Gorgie Dang again, they're going to have that continuing 10-day contract roster spot be open for the foreseeable future if this is what they choose to do. But there's also rumors here, the latest information from, like I said, Eric Pincus, from his article on Bleacher Report. And he's saying that, Spurs fans can expect the Spurs to continue to make these kinds of moves. While they're not sexy, this is, still a way for the Spurs to go ahead and, try to, I guess, spend that 15.9 million that they need to, in order to not go ahead and give those bonuses out to the players right now. And he was saying that a source close to the Spurs feels like they're going to be able to do just that by making some trades before the deadline, which is coming up here on February the 9th. So there is some other stuff that the Spurs could do, and not only the Spurs, but the Pacers as well. And there's always talks that are going to be swirling around, one Russell Westbrook and the Lakers, and the Lakers have shown interest in one Jakob Portal, so the Spurs could do a swap, and go ahead and take on Russell Westbrook's horrible contract, because they still have the cap space to do so for a first round pick. But if the Lakers want to go ahead and take on one Jakob Portal and give another maybe second round pick or something of that nature, maybe things can work for both teams. But there would probably have to be another team that would have to get involved to make this whole deal work. So there goes the chink in the armor. Will it happen? Possibly. How likely is it? Who knows, but those are just rumors.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if the Spurs are going to make big trades, but as I mentioned earlier, I really think Josh Richardson has to be the guy to go. Obviously, not because I don't think he's a good player or he doesn't have
Yeah.
value. Again, it's like quite the opposite. He is really valuable and he could walk for nothing this offseason, just like Jakob Pertl. But with Jakob, you have the insurance of being able to offer him a big role regardless of who you land in the draft. You have the money to pay him. Richardson may not care about money at this point. He's getting towards his 30s almost. He probably wants to contend. He doesn't want to be with a rebuilding franchise forever. And if you're the Spurs and you're looking at it from a perspective of, man, we need some more lottery balls. Well, I think one of the best ways to do that is to move off of a guy who has clearly helped you stay competitive in almost every game he's played in this season. So I'd hate to see him go, but at the same time, the sound of better lottery odds and possibly getting a better chance to get a Victor Wembanyama or a Scoot Henderson, I honestly, I like that a lot more than just continuing to hold on to Josh Richardson. So the Spurs are kind of in that area where you're halfway through the season. It's time to kind of figure out, what do you want to do? Are you really fully committing to this rebuild, or are we doing what we talked about earlier, Joe, where it's like, yeah, it's a soft rebuild. We'll lose if we can, but we're not going to try to lose. So it'll be interesting to see what direction they go in, because it could change a lot for the future of this franchise potentially.
Yeah, because currently, look at the Spurs, and I believe the Rockets have the worst record in the league right now at 10-30, and then it's the Spurs at 13-28. They're the fourth worst team in the NBA, and they're only more horrible than the Pistons, who are 11-32, and the Hornets, who are 11-30. And everybody wanted the Hornets to do good this season, but that was not the case. And you could
No.
tell early on that that was not going to be in the cards for the Hornets. They were not going to have a good season. So unfortunately for Spurs fans, that kind of burst their bubble a little bit. But regardless, I mean, the Spurs, I think, still, like you were saying, need to figure some things out here and decide what they actually want to do, which brings us to our next topic, because the way that the current trajectory is for this team, they are still projected to get a top, at least top five pick. But now they went ahead and released news that Devin Vassell is going to be missing some games here because he's had surgery on his knee, orthoscopic knee surgery. There's no timetable on his return, but Coach Pop went ahead and did say this last Friday that he expects that the likelihood of Devin Vassell returning would be sometime after the All-Star break, per Jeff McDonald of the San Antonio Express News. Um, so with that said, Devin Vassell was an instrumental part to this team in the starting lineup, and now that he is not going to be there, you would think that some other players are going to wind up probably getting a little bit more playing time in the absence of one Devin Vassell. I mean, you do have that to look forward to, but unfortunately, with Devin not there, I would go ahead and think that the Spurs are going to lose more often than they're going to win. So I'm going to ask you, what are your expectations for the Spurs now that Devin Vassell's not going to be in the starting lineup?
I think it changes things just a little bit. I mean, it's only a 2 or 3 game sample size, but without Devin Vassell, they were, fine against the Pistons. It's not like they really struggled against the Pistons. They were really close with the Celtics. They were really close with the Grizzlies, who are both excellent teams that could be contending for a title this season. So, while I think his scoring is important, and his playmaking that has become better this season is also important, I don't think losing him changes that much, because philosophically, the Spurs are going to do what they do. They're going to move the ball. There's going to be a lot of cuts. There's going to be a lot of flashes to the high post. There's going to be, a lot of screens. There's going to be a lot of relocation, and there's going to be a lot of passing. So, whether Devin Vassell is there or not, they're going to continue to operate under those, sort of rules of their motion offense, right? So, are they going to lose more games? Probably, but let's be honest, they were really bad with Devin Vassell, and now they're still going to be bad without him. How much worse is it going to be? Maybe incrementally so, but he hasn't been very good on the defensive end, and the Spurs are really bad on the defensive end too. So I think it's kind of a wash, but Keldon Johnson being out too is probably going to impact things. Hopefully he comes back for that Alamo Dome game, because I'm excited for that.
Yeah, and currently with the Spurs depth chart, I mean, with Devin Vassell out, you have Stanley Johnson as your shooting guard, and then you do have Blake Wesley listed as your shooting guard as well, but he hasn't played with the team. He's still with the Austin Spurs right now.
Joe, I've got to be honest with you. I'm pretty tired of watching Stanley Johnson play basketball. Like, he's a 26-year-old who's going to be 27 sometime soon. He's a former lottery pick. He's been in the NBA for almost 7 years now, nearly a decade. He didn't really do anything with his previous teams. He's not a developmental project. He's not a win now player. He's just a piece that is holding in place, right? He's just a little piece that's going to be
He's
here
a
for a
body out
while. I would much rather see, Isaiah Roby, who's younger out there. I'd rather see Keita Bates-Diop, who I do think can contribute to winning off the bench. I'd rather see Blake Wesley, but the Spurs fell in love for some reason with Stanley Johnson. He's shooting like 50% from three, even though he's a 30% three-point shooter for his career. Look, it's great that he's out there. I'm glad that he's, maybe going to earn his way back in the NBA, but I just don't want to see it with the Spurs. I'd just rather see them invest minutes in those younger players. And, no offense to Stanley Johnson, but Blake Wesley has been called up to the NBA with the Spurs for the last week, and he hasn't gotten in a single game. So someone's got to go. Someone's got to go.
I don't know if they haven't played Blake Wesley because they're still wanting to bring him back slowly from injury. I mean, if you're not going to play him and he's been with the team, for a week already, I mean, don't you think you're going to go ahead and recall him sooner or later to, back to the Austin Spurs so he can at least get some reps and playing time there? Because the last thing you want is just for your young player just to sit there and do nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what kind of confuses me, because when he was with the Austin Spurs, right, when he came back from, that injury that kept him out for like pretty much the entire first half of the season, he was playing like 25, 30 minutes per game. He was the leading scorer. He was like clearly the go-to guy for Austin. And they brought him up, and I thought, okay, well, they're bringing him up because one, they may think he's ready, but two, they need extra bodies, right? They need depth
Yeah.
insurance. And I was hoping that when they brought him back up, it was going to be a situation where, okay, Trey's the starting point guard, clearly, but now you have a backup point guard. And they haven't done that. He just hasn't played. He's just been sitting there. In my opinion, I mean, it doesn't matter. Of course, it's nice to be on the bench and get to experience an NBA game and see what your teammates are doing and learn from that experience. But Joe, I kind of feel like for young players, nothing's better than game experience. And whether that's in the G League or the NBA, I just don't want to see him sitting at the end of a bench and warming a bench like that. That shouldn't be happening for a team that's rebuilding in their development mode, talent acquisition mode. Like, love Stanley Johnson. I'm proud that he's out there, but I don't want to see him. I'm sorry. I don't really want to see him. And I think they really should consider moving on from Josh Richardson if they can get a first rounder, because otherwise this dude's just going to be sitting around doing nothing. And I don't want to see that from Blake Wesley.
I got you, man. But that's a conundrum that we're in now with the Spurs, just like you said, fall in love with Stanley Johnson. I mean, not only is Blake Wesley not seen any playing time, Isaiah Roby hasn't seen much playing time either, and that's a shame because for everything that Isaiah Roby does well, he's a very versatile player. They're just not playing him. And I like seeing the kid out there on the court. He does a lot of things well. It's not like he's a superstar, and let's get that straight, but he's a very good, solid addition. And like I said, very versatile player, and I like seeing him out there on the court. Same thing with Blake Wesley. Blake Wesley to me was a standout in the summer league. I like seeing the kid. He was exciting to watch. He didn't play very many games with the Spurs because, of course, he had that injury early on. But you still, Spurs fans want to get excited for something. And I think giving the young kid some run, versus going ahead and just going with your vet, it's going to be good for his growth. And not only that, but the fans want to see him play too. So we'll see what they wind up doing as the season unfolds here, but that's a head scratcher, Noah.
Yeah. And again, like it's not the biggest deal in the world. I don't want to, get too down on the Spurs, but it is one of those things where I look at Pop and I'm like, that's one of his like old head, like stuck in his ways. Like you got to earn it. And I get it. You got to earn it. But at the same time, let's prioritize who's going to be here. You think Stanley Johnson's going to be here in 2 years, 3 years? No, he's
Yeah.
not going to be here. He's not going to, he may not even be in the NBA anymore. So let's prioritize the guy who you drafted in the first round. Like, again, not a big deal, just a personal thing. But please, Pop, that's all, a late Christmas present. That's all I want. I just want to see Blake Wesley in an NBA game. That's all I'm asking for.
Yeah, and speaking of NBA games, as we start bringing this thing to a close here, we do have a very important game coming up. Yes, the Spurs are going to go ahead and play the Grizzlies again. They're going to finish their back-to-back games that they have over there with them. That's not the game we're talking about. We're talking about the game, and that's coming up on Friday, the 13th, here in San Antonio, and that is
Yep.
the game at the Dome, returning to the Dome after what it's going to be, I'd say 19 plus years, maybe 20 years that they played a game in the Alamo Dome, which is,
At
it's been
least. Yeah, at least.
quite some time. Um, and it's a big deal here in San Antonio. The Spurs want to go ahead and break the all-time attendance record. And as of this recording, I believe they were around 1,200 tickets away from breaking that record. And there are 4,000 tickets away from actually selling out the Dome entirely. I think they're gonna wind up breaking the record. I don't know if they're gonna sell out the dome or not. I would say it's gonna be really close. But either way, I mean, I haven't been to an Alamo Dome game where there's been that many fans in attendance. Back in the old days when you'd go and see a Spurs game at the Alamo Dome, I think it was seating somewhere in the neighborhood of 32 to 35,000. And during the playoffs, they would sometimes peel back that curtain a little bit,
Curtain. Yep.
and they would allow more people to go ahead and sit in the seats. And there was a big, ugly blue curtain that separated the other half of the Alamo Dome. But in this occasion, they're going to open up the whole dome, so there's not going to be a curtain there. And they even showed video of the workers going ahead and installing the Fiesta Court there at the Alamo Dome. Different configuration from the NCAA games because it's not on a stage. It's just
Yeah.
right there on the floor. So I'm like, okay, this is a throwback to how they used to have the setup back in the day. But there's an awful lot of space from where the fans are sitting up there, and then you just have this big open space on the ground. So I don't know how they're going to go ahead and kind of fill that in as far as the aesthetics go. But either way, I'm just excited to be able to return back and watch this game, this historic game, and a lot of the Spurs Twitter faithful are gonna be there. I gotta ask you, will you be one of those?
No, I will not be there.
Oh,
I've got some stuff that I gotta get done here in Dallas, and then I've also got a friend's birthday, one of my best friends. He's actually gonna be one of my best man in my wedding, so
oh,
can't
nice.
miss that birthday.
Yeah.
Really excited for that, but also, I'm gonna be tuning into that game. I'm gonna be tuning into that game. I'm excited for it, and, our good friend Carolina Teagues, she also tweeted, I don't know if you saw, but the Spurs are gonna be giving out those little lenses to put over your flash. It's gonna be Fiesta colors. I'm sure the aesthetic of that is gonna be awesome. And Joe, as someone who, I'm fairly young. I didn't really get to experience games in the Alamo Dome. The only time I've ever been there was when Kansas played Memphis for the championship in 2008 for the college championship for basketball, and it was so crazy. They had lifted the curtains. Everybody was excited. I'm expecting that kind of atmosphere to be at this game. I'm really jealous that y'all are going to be there, but y'all better rock the house because I'm excited. I want to see y'all on TV. I want to hear the crowd through the TV. And man, I wish I could be there, but I know it's going to be a good game, and I'm sure they're going to sell it out.
Yeah, I know that the Fiesta Bros will be there. I saw Ty's post. So I know Mac and Nick and they're all gonna be there, and so
Yeah.
is some of the other Spurs Twitter faithful. So we're all trying to see how we can kind of meet up either before or after and get a pick. It's gonna be chaos though, with that many people in there. The only thing that I'm hoping, Noah, is that we don't have any hangups here and that everybody is able to enter the dome
Yep.
and get to their seats before the game starts. You're gonna have to get there early. The city lots are gonna be open, some of them with free public parking. The park and ride is also an option if you want to go ahead and use the park and ride, I believe, from Crossroads. So you can go ahead and I think it's like $1.30, something like that, for a round trip or something. So it's not a bad option. I mean, because if you're trying to go ahead and park at the dome parking and you don't get there early enough, good luck.
Yeah.
You might as well just go ahead and park far away and get an Uber and get as close as you can because you're gonna have to walk. And that's the situation that I'm in because I'm taking my son and my oldest son. Last time he was there, I had him in my arms as a baby. Now we're coming back full circle with him being able to buy dad a beer now. So it's like
Wow.
how thoughtful of you. You know, I don't have to carry you anymore. But we're trying to get there, and he gets out of work around 5:30. So I'm like,
That's a
we're gonna
close
be
one.
cutting it
You're cutting
close.
it close. Yeah. Dang.
So I
Whew.
told him, "We might have to just have somebody drop us off, and I'm not even gonna deal with the parking because I don't wanna be driving around forever. Not only that, but you're gonna be parked like, you're gonna be stopped in traffic just trying to park, and you're gonna
Yeah.
eat another 30, 40 minutes. So by the time you go through the checkpoint, we're probably gonna be late getting to our seats." So I said, "No, we'll probably gotta be dropped off 2 blocks away or so and then just walk over there with everyone else." So, yeah, I'm trying to figure that out. It's just chaos, man, with that many people in attendance.
Yeah,
So
no, I agree with you 100%. And Joe, honestly, I don't think I mentioned this, but I think there's also going to be like there's a lot of old school fans who they still show up to the ticket gates or whatever, and they buy
oh, yeah.
tickets the day of. That's why I think that the Spurs are going to sell it out because they're already so close to breaking the record, right? And then it's a couple thousand tickets from there. I could easily see fans showing up and they sell out the tickets. So good luck to you. I hope that you're able to get there on time because I think it's going to be amazing. I think it's gonna be one of those sporting events that are unforgettable. Like regardless of win, loss, we know Steph Curry is gonna be healthy. I'm sure that Keldon Johnson's gonna be back out there for this game. I'm excited for it. Again, I'm just really jealous that y'all are actually gonna be there in person because I
Yeah.
so badly wanted to go.
No, I so badly feel like the Spurs need to actually win this game. Out of
Yeah.
everything that's gone on throughout this season and the team not being very good, this is a must win. You're in front of us. You're going to be front in front of almost a sold out crowd, making history. The only televised game that's going to come out on to a national audience. You know, it's going to be on ESPN. You're gonna have to win this game. I don't care what Pop has to do. You got to win this game for the fans. This is it. This is the season. To me, this is the season. Everybody's going out there. They're gonna want this one. Just give us this one game. You know, I'm hoping and crossing my fingers that I saw that Steph Curry kind of tweaked his hand or finger the other day. So I'm hoping that they might rest him a little bit. You know, I wouldn't be mad. So
Yeah.
the San Antonio Spurs can get this win. If they get this one, this is the one that I want, as a Spurs fan. This is the only win that I want. And whatever happens at during the rest of the season, to me, it's a wash. I have to have this one. Just give me this one. That's all I'm asking. So we're gonna go ahead and bring this show to a close, Noah. But as we do, where can everybody follow you on social media and also check out all the articles that you got coming out?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at n_Magaro, Magaro. You can also check my words out at Pounding the Rock. You can also find me at Compare Bet. I do some sports betting stuff there for them. You can also check my YouTube channel out. I've been doing, some Spurs film studies here or there, some breakdowns. So check me out there. It's just my name, Noah Magaro-George. And then finally, Joe, I've given in. I've joined TikTok. So I am on TikTok. I am making Spurs TikToks now. So if you want to check me out, I think I'm Noah Magaro-George there as well. So if you can't find me, just look up Spurs stuff. I'm sure there's not too many Spurs TikTokers out there, but that's pretty much it. That's all the places you can find me. I guess our Alamo City Limits podcast that I do with Dame, that'll be good, up and running again this week. But Joe, thank you so much for having me. I hope you have a great time at that game. And, I had a blast talking Spurs basketball with you. Hopefully they get that dub for you at the Alamo Dome.
Yeah, not just for me, but for the rest of the fans
For
in
the fan
attendance
base.
too. Yeah.
For the
Yeah, but
fan
it's
base.
always
They
good
need
to
it.
have you on the show. Always great talking Spurs basketball with you. And also, you can go ahead and follow me at Two Shots Podcast. I'm also on YouTube, so you can go ahead and give my lowly YouTube channel some love and subscribe there too. I have also joined TikTok. I went ahead and entered the fold as well. No, I've been on there for a little bit already, trying to release some Spurs related TikToks. So I think it's probably just me and you that are on
I
there.
haven't seen anyone else do Spurs stuff. So I'll look for you because I'm sure I'll find you.
I'm gonna look for you too because I'm serious. I don't think there's very many of us on TikTok, and that's not a bad thing necessarily, you know. So hopefully we can make that platform grow a little bit for and give some Spurs love to the fans that are on there. And if you see us on TikTok, make sure you follow both of us, please. So for Noah Magaro-George, I'm Joe Garcia. Thank you for watching and listening to another episode of the Two Shots Podcast. And like we always say, spread the love, stop the hate, be kind. We're out. Peace.